Thanks for staying with us. Now, the Dublin Bowie Festival kicked off on Tuesday, and there's still lots of events to come to celebrate the iconic artist, David Bowie.
Sounds absolutely incredible. And after spending over 40 years playing alongside David Bowie himself, our next guest knows better than most just how special he is, of course, pianist Mike Garson. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning to you.
Great to have you with us. It's amazing to think just in January there marked 10 years since David passed away. You knew him so well. Take us back to 1972 when you were asked to do an audition with him.
Since no one was born then, you know, I could fill you in.
I
could fill you in on the history. I didn't know who he was when he called me. And I was a jazz musician, but something seemed intriguing. And I went for the audition. I was hired for 8 weeks. I ended up being the longest standing musician with him, 400 concerts and maybe 20 albums.
What was it between you that the friendship and the work relationship lasted so long?
I think our thought process about creativity, we both liked being in the moment and letting the music just emerge and not like sort of micromanage it. He was very trusting as a leader, you know. He would never do this, do that. He just give me an overview of the music. And it was, I've played for maybe 800 singers in my life.
Wow.
And he was by far the most connecting and interactive.
That's really, interesting. Yeah. Because as you say, you've worked with so many stars.
So many.
He talked about how his heart felt glad when he was in the same room with you, the presence that you had on him. How important was that for somebody like David Bowie, who had the world at his feet, to have somebody that he trusted implicitly?
You know, it warmed my heart. Naturally, I didn't know that all the years that he said that quote, but it certainly felt very good. I think we just had a telepathic connection. There's something about a pianist. I could feel his heart when we were playing, and it was like an amazing interaction. It was a very, very special experience, and I would never have known it, you know, because my training was in classical and jazz,
and stuff.
And I'm a composer and live in another world. He actually said in 1973, Mike Garson is the best rock pianist in the world because he doesn't play rock. And that's a typical David Bowie.
I mean, David Bowie, I mean, when you look back on his career, and it must have been so exciting to be playing with him in those concerts, because it wasn't just the music, it was his look, the androgynous look, the Ziggy Stardust feel. Like he was breaking boundaries then that people tried to do afterwards.
People are still following that template.
They're still following now. Like, he was an amazing musician and an artist in those respects.
Really was.
They must have been such exciting times.
Well, let's face it, I was on the first Ziggy Stardust tour in the United States. And I didn't play all the songs with the Spiders from Mars because I was the new man on the block. So I snuck out into the audience a few times. It's probably the only time I saw him from his face forward, because I was always playing piano behind him.
Yeah.
And I looked at this guy. Not only did he look great, he sounded great, he moved great. I thought, this guy's a genius. I think I want to stay more than the 8 weeks I was hired for, and I made a decision and it stuck.
Did you get to appreciate that? Because you were there, you were working. You know, you're behind him, you know.
I appreciate it when I see it on YouTube now and I see his face. I didn't realize just so much expression going on. I mean, I was doing a job. I didn't have time to be a fan.
No.
But now I can be.
Because some of the great concerts, like you think back to this one, Hammersmith in 1973, and some of the people that were in the crowd, Barbra Streisand, Ringo Starr, like an epic, it will go down in history. But you're on stage, you know, you'd nearly love to be able to be front row and actually just get to say.
I wish I met all those people afterwards, but when I'm playing, it could be a bar or a club or a wedding, or you could be playing at Wembley or Madison Square Garden. You're doing your job. So a lot of the joy came afterwards because your job is to make sure you support
What were those
him.
parties like? Yeah, were they the sex, drugs and rock and roll?
What about it?
Was it the sex, drugs, and rock and roll? As people remember, like they say, the 70s and all that was just partying and stuff.
I mean, that's all it was. My particular upbringing, I never used drugs and I never drank, and I was always about the music. So I was in a way holding the space for the insanity
around
that was going around me. And I kind of stayed pretty stable and, you know, watched a lot of people burn and crash.
Yeah, and they burned and crashed.
They burned and crashed, you know.
One thing I found fascinating is that, and he'd said it throughout his life, a psychic told him that he was going to die on his 69th birthday, when he was 69, and he did.
He told me that standing in a bus after a concert, it was our tour bus, and we're just chatting at about 1 a.m, just alone. And I don't know what made him tell me this. So he told me this in the mid-90s, so it would have been like 20 years before he passed. And he said it matter of fact, because a lot of psychics are, you know, fake. You know, this guy must have been real, perceived something, and David didn't question it. Now, probably coming around to knowing you're dying, it's probably a little different than looking at it from 30 years earlier. Oh, I'm going to die. The guy told him that in the 70s. So I think anyone who gets sick doesn't want to die. Let's face it, you know.
No,
it's incredible.
But the way he was so matter-of-fact with it
as well. He was matter-of-fact about it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't share this till after he passed. I was walking around with, I can't tell anybody that David told me this. That's how close we were on a spiritual level.
Listen, it was just January there, the 10th anniversary of him passing. How important is it with this Bowie Festival to be able to celebrate the amazing artist he was?
That's why I wanted to come back here, because Dublin is one of my favorite places in the world to play, and I've been here so many times, and I played with him at, it was called The Point, I think.
Yeah, The Point, the Three Arena.
Yeah. And I played there last year with a Bowie Festival with the Symphony Orchestra. Amazing. This year I'm with 4 alumni, Jerry Leonard, who lives from this town, and Mark Platty, and Earl Slick has come with us from New York. And so there's 4 of us that are still kicking, you know, and
which fans will love this, because they're more intimate concerts. They're in Whelan's tomorrow night, and then in Opium on Saturday night. But then you've a masterclass in the Royal College of Surgeons on Sunday, where people can really just be with you and chat to you.
Yeah, that's in the afternoon, and it's always my favorite thing to do, because I kind of know what I play, because I've been doing it my whole life. But you get questions and you never know where that's going to go. So it's a great experience. I hope some people come out to that masterclass. But the concerts themselves are probably sold out.
What's your greatest memory of being alongside him?
The craziest memory was at the Hammersmith, the one you're talking about.
In 1970.
Because he got nervous and he told me to open the show for him.
Oh, well, listen.
And he felt more nervous for you, which is amazing.
And he said he was more nervous.
Listen, it's DublinBowieFestival.ie if you want further information on it.
Thank you
so much.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you.